So we're talking about where did you grow up? You said you grew up in Cherokee County, Georgia, or you were born in Cherokee County, Georgia.
Cherokee County, Georgia, in the country, yeah.
And then you grew up in Hawaii. When did you guys move to Hawaii?
I was about a year and a half old.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you don't even really remember.
And then, well, I can remember Georgia too. I mean, my mother even used to say my memory was kind of sharp, because I remember some things that happened when I was just a little kid. You know, that they couldn't hardly remember, except little spots. But I remember some things almost like it was had just happened. You know.
Yeah.
But then there's from time to time some things, of course, I cannot remember, but little things that stand out in your mind, you know.
Yeah. So you said you grew up in Waimea.
Waimea. It's on the Big Island, upper neck, they call it, of Big Island, near the Parker Ranch.
Okay. So where you had cowboys and rodeos 40 years before Wild West in the mainland. Were you involved with the cowboys and stuff?
Not much. I did some horse riding, but not much at all, because I was going to school and going to karate right after school, and just most people, if your family worked more with the Parker Ranch, you had something to do with it. But my father was in the military, so he was always going off the island. He was going to someplace, and sometimes I would go with my mother to him, where he was in California, North Carolina, someplace where he might be stationed.
Was he in the Marines as well?
Marine Corps, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you talked about there being a number of ethnic groups that emigrated to Hawaii. To work in industries like whaling, sugar, and pineapple. What kind of work did you do as a young person growing up in?
I remember when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, I got a shoe shine job at a barbershop, local barbershop.
Okay.
And then I got a paper route a little later on, and that was the most things that were available to us until we got older. Then sometimes, like if you had an uncle or a friend or the family that worked in the pineapple field, you'd go with them to learn how to do what they were doing, because someday you might be working there. But what happened, World War II caused a lot of young people who joined the military to not come back. They would come back home for a little bit, but then because on the Big Island, the only thing was ranching and farming, and a lot of people didn't like it. It's just that they had another choice when they left the islands. They live in the city and they live among a lot of other people, so a lot of them decided to stay off the island.
Right.
And like me, I never hardly went back.
Right.
And many people did that. World War II was big, and then the Korean War, when it came, then another lot of people, young men especially, joined the service and didn't come back.
So when did you decide that you'd want to go into the military, become a Marine like your father?
Let's see. I always felt that I was going to join the Marine Corps, but I didn't know exactly when, except when I came to the States. I flew into Seattle, Washington, 17 years old, and I hitchhiked across the country.
Oh, wow.
And when I had relatives in Georgia, so when I went there, I would live with them for a while, and then I went down to another place in south part in Georgia, but in a place called Vidalia.
Oh.
And I worked for a little while as a cinema theater booth operator. Had in those days they had big 35 millimeter projectors, and they had two going in each one. One ran for 20 minutes, and the other ran for 20 minutes. So you had to get the timing set up for the reels to keep the movie going. Anyway, so finally from there I joined the Marine Corps, 1961. March of 1961.
So then you went off to boot camp.
Then went to boot camp at Parris Island. Went to infantry training in North Carolina, in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And then I went to Okinawa, and I came back and for a while I was at Quantico at the FBI Academy, which is on the Marine Corps base there, and also was at the rifle range there. And went back to Okinawa, then went to Vietnam, and then it was the whole most of my time seemed like it was spent during the Vietnamese War.
Right.
I was my total active duty was 8 years and 9 months. Wow. But then when I got out, I stayed for another year as a reserve in California. But anyway, let's see. Okay, I spent that time in the Marine Corps. I was lucky to be able to spend a lot of time in Okinawa, but because of the duty that I had, once in a while they would give us good rest period, like 6 months. They'd send us to some good duty station in the Marine Corps. Sometimes it was just like a sergeant of the guard, or once I was an armorer in Marine Barracks in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Also did a lot of guard duty there, but it was pretty easy job for us.
Great.
And so that's where I established the Goju-ryu first in Puerto Rico in 1965, and then 2004 I went back to Puerto Rico to celebrate the 40th year. I guess it was that to be the 40th. I guess it was the 40th year of our karate being in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
And I taught, and they don't have the San Juan Marine Barracks anymore. I left there in 65 or 66, and then it dissolved. They disbanded it, the Marine Corps Barracks there. But still, I have many students. My senior student in those days, he was like a high school student then. Well, in those days, I was like 22, 23 years old, something like that, and he was only like in high school. But in those days, if you're in high school, someone who's a few years older than you, they seem like your like young brother or something, and you seem like their big brother. So in those days, I felt separated in age. But now he's just a few years less than me, so he's very, very good in Puerto Rico. But he's kind of like he's always been the leader in Puerto Rico for karate. Jaime Acosta. Yeah.
Okay. Now you knew some other people that are now many years in karate back in the military. You knew other people like Frank Van Lenten.
Oh yes, I met. In fact, my last company gunny was Frank Van Lenten in the Marine Corps at Camp Hansen in Okinawa in 1969, years before I got out. Awesome. I did not even know that he practiced karate. And then somebody later told me that, your company gunny there, he's been in Okinawa many times and he's been practicing for a long time. But mostly his practice was most of the convenient dojos that are close to the bases. But I was lucky because I went right down to Naha when I first got there the first time, and then stayed with the Higa group, which was not too well known by the GIs because it's kind of off the beaten path.
Right. Were they still down? We're still down in Yoyogi.
Yoyogi. That was the old dojo. Was when I first
Yogi
began.
Park.
Yogimachi.
Yogimachi.
Yeah. And in the old days, of course, it was the old wooden dojo, and it had a nice Okinawan house behind it. But maybe in 1972 or 3, around that time, they tore everything down and rebuilt a news dojo, and his family lived beside the dojo, but kind of attached to it, a part that was attached to it, which was a beautiful house, 2 or 3 floors in that part of the house there. Really nice.
So
Master Matayoshi was living in the dojo in the early days, and he, in 1972 or so, he separated from that dojo and went up to a place called Sobe Hill, bought land up there and built his own beautiful dojo and his home up there.
That was after he had lived in Japan, mainland Japan, for a while.
Kawasaki, from before the war, or just during the war, I guess, or whatever. Then afterwards, he lived in Kawasaki until about 1960, 61. He was in the dojo when I first went to that dojo, and he'd been back for a while. And in the Higa dojo there, Shikin Taira, who was another martial Kobudo teacher, and a few others, Uyehara Sensei, a lot of those were kind of friends with Higa Sensei, so they had taken on their karate, their Kobudo. And then when Master Matayoshi came, then it was kind of, I hate to say a bad situation, but Master Matayoshi came back right when those people were kind of running the Kobudo for the Higa dojo. So he didn't really want to make waves, so he kind of, his habit was to teach on Saturday and Sunday in the Higa dojo.
Right.
And many people came from different styles of the karate to study under Master Matayoshi, and did that up until he built his own dojo up on Sobe Hill. For about 10 years he lived in the Higa dojo. The Higa dojo was real nice inside. It was the old dojo, but behind the dojo was Higa Sensei's family home. Master Matayoshi lived in one end of that dojo. It was like a big room, and had like 2 separate rooms. One was the kitchen and that part of the area, and then the other part was the living room and bedroom. And at night they would take a futon and put it on the ground, on the floor there, and that would be the bedroom. In the daytime they fold those up and put them in a big cabinet above the floor. And then when Sensei got his beautiful home, nice home up in Sobe, it really, it was very impressive to see him going from where he was, it's very humble type surroundings there, to having a real nice home. But he had his wife and his Kiyomi, his daughter, and Yasushi, his son.
So Matayoshi Sensei would train Gojuru in the
Oh yes, all throughout the Higa dojo. He was always on the dojo floor at night. Higa Sensei was always there at night. He and his son and many other senior teachers under Higa Sensei and Master Matayoshi was one of the senior teachers of the dojo.
And Hokama Sensei was there? Or?
Hokama Sensei, he was one of my first classmates there that I can really remember. He is just like, I think 1 year younger than me. So he's just a little young guy. I was like 19, he was like 18, I guess, in the dojo.
I'm trying to remember the other teachers, the other senior...
Kyuna Sensei was one of them, and Gibo Sensei. Gibo Sensei at that time was a taxi driver. Very humble guy. I mean, didn't have a big job, but he eventually bought several taxis and started his own little taxi company. And finally, he was going to school at the same time to become like a construction engineer or something like that. So finally, he got his own big company. He has a big company now of construction where he builds homes, I think, and buildings, and has a real good job there, real good life. There's a big, beautiful dojo down in Itoman where the dojos were in the old days, and beautiful dojo, beautiful house. It really, it's very beautiful. Most Okinawan homes are kind of small and kind of humble looking, but he was able to build a big house. He had like 6 or 7 daughters, and they grew up one right behind the others in the same house there. So.
Fukuchi Sensei?
Fukuchi Sensei, oh yeah, he was one of the top ones of Higa Senseis, yeah. He was really like the bull in the dojo, a very powerful person. And one of the friends that I can never forget is Kyuna Sensei. I never saw him wear a gi in the dojo. All the years I was training there until later on in the years, like in the 90s, I saw him in a gi. But he just came to train. He didn't come to put a gi on. In those days, though, if you had a gi, it was like your suit or tuxedo. You would keep it folded up at your home, and where there's a demonstration, everybody get their gis and put their gis on. Right. But in the dojo, we just train with the shorts and t-shirt. It's like very, very casual. Yeah.
You had told me a story before about how you had actually brought a lot of the sackcloth or parachute cloth.
Well, in the Marine Corps, we have the mattress covers.
Okay.
And sometimes you could get a couple of mattress covers here and there, go to survey, get some that are ripped up or some that are not so bad material, but you take them to what we call the sewing lady, and she would measure you. And usually they'd come right to the cuff of your sleeve or the ankle of your pants. And when you wash them, they always shrunk up a lot. And a lot of people, if you see pictures today of men that train in Okinawa in the 60s especially, 50s and 60s, you see them with real short pants on. That's after they've washed them a few times. And a lot of people in America thought, well, that's the way they're supposed to be. So in those days, you saw Americans who had never been to Okinawa, but saw the pictures from Okinawa. They would have their gis with like walking shorts, and real short sleeve, real short pants.
Right. I forget what you were telling me that you used parachute cord for, or needed. Maybe
I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of yards for Mr. Nakasone when he began Shureido, because in the old days nunchak always have been with a parachute cord, but the first Sansetsu were bound together by a parachute cord, nylon, and now of course they have the chain and this kind of metal.
Can you tell me about how you met Nakasone Sensei? And
okay. I was at the Shoreikan Dojo in Koza, and he was studying there, and that's 1967 or 68.
Were you teaching at that time at the Shoreikan Dojo?
I was teaching Kobudo, and also learning the Gighan, the Kakoha, but I really liked that. It was really, really interesting. But Mr. Nakasone was just a regular student there. And then I became good friends with him, and I asked him...
About the similar age?
We're just about the same age. He might be just a little younger than me, but anyway, you're in the same generation. And so I asked him if because he told me he had a sporting goods store. So I went to the sporting goods store one time, and it was just baseball stuff, golf stuff, and just common sports. But he said, if you want a gi, I know a place that can have one made for you. Or if you want kobudo, I know places that can make them here on the island for you. So after a while, when I would buy certain things from him, I made the suggestion that he should just make a store that sells Kobudo, because it's going to be so very popular. It is in the Marine Corps, and it's getting more and more popular in the States. Well, finally, he did make his Shureido, and the person that helped him was Toshio Tamino, to help him design the emblem for the Shureido, the gate and Shureido name. And then I wrote his first English advertisement, just so simple to say just authentic Okinawan martial arts equipment. It was just that simple, you know. But just all he wanted was something simple like that.
Excellent.
So then he got started in Naha. If you're familiar with Naha, there's a Kokusai Dori which goes right down the middle town of Naha. Then at one end of it, the north side there, is Asato Dori and Tomari Dori, which takes you to the Tomori part. Well, he used to be at the end of that in a real small, I mean, good grief, maybe 15 by 20 or maybe 15 by 50, a small store. And at that time, he would go out, he would be in his car or in his truck, and I would go with him sometime on the weekend to different parts of the island to get gis that were being made here. The top would be made here, the bottom here, and the belts over here. Go pick up bo, sai, tonfa. And this reminds me of many things about that now. Just I used to go to the shipyards where they would have oil drums, 55-gallon oil drums. And they had to separate them in the holes because of the sparks that could maybe fly from if they were getting bad weather or in the waves, they hit each other. So they had very strong wood. It's like teak or mahogany or something, very powerful wood from, I think, mostly from the Philippines. And I would go, it was like big railroad ties. And I would get a few of those on a Marine Corps truck and take them over to a shop. And because they couldn't have knots in them because they had to be very strong and very sturdy for these big barrels, big drums. So anyway, we'd get some good wood for him to make nunchaku, tonfa, and bo. And anything he needed to make from wood, he'd use those. And in modern day, after that, say in the 70s, I guess, he was able to get commercial wood from Japan and Taiwan and Philippines, other places.
You've told me before about how you've made your own bow and
Master Matayoshi, when we started studying something, like an eiku, which is the oar, we would go to a carpenter that was nearby there, and they would cut the general size of it. But then we'd get an old Coke bottle, when they were green colored, remember? Yeah. And like 5 cents for out of the Coke machine. He would get that and would break it, and it put big slivers, like the size of a half a dollar or a quarter. Yeah. And then it has a very cutting edge on it. And you hold it in your hand where it wouldn't cut your hand, but it'd be easy to slide it along the wood, and you just take big pieces of wood off, shavings off. So we would do the eiku that way, anything, the eiku, sunsetsu cone, a bow, tonfa, everything that we made of wood, we would finish them once we had the rough one made, and made in the rough. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And when Sensei would teach you, he had his wife's family lived up in Ginoza, Okinawa. It's above Kin Village in that part of the east side of Okinawa. Big, beautiful, I don't know how many acres they had, but it looked like thousands of acres there on sugar cane and sometimes sugar cane, sometimes pineapple. And when we were doing the kama, we'd go there, we'd cut like a row or so, or maybe 100 yards of sugar cane. And you use one in each hand. And sometimes if you just had one kama, you'd use a short stick in the other hand, and you sort of lean the sugar cane, like they do in Hawaii. You just lean the sugar cane over and you can chop it near the roots. Because if you just chop it, all the standing straight up. So there's all kind of, sometimes fleas, all kind of insects, and it's dirty, and so it falls right down on you. So the idea is to push it to the side, and then you cut it so it falls right there. And use the gua, the hoe, and let's see. Well, anything that he wanted us to learn that we had practical use to go use it, then he would have us practice that. And he would say, if you're cutting in the field and somebody in the old days were to come to attack you, then at least you know how what it would be like to be in that surrounding and be able to react to it. So. And one experience, a good experience, is going to Nago Bay. It's on the west side of Okinawa. and there's a big, beautiful bay. And when the tide is out, the bay is very shallow in most places. And to use like the chizikumbo, which is the boat, the net handles, we would just, many of my friends, where they were fishermen anyway around Nago, we would go out and get great sushi, beautiful sushi. Just in the morning, we would get a big pot of rice, and it would still be in the aluminum container. We'd wrap that in burlap bag and put it in a boat. And maybe 2 or 3 hours would go out into the bay there and go fishing, get fresh sashimi, and have the wasabi and everything right there, put it together on the rice. Oh, it's so good, man. Just
sounds great.
Oh, so fantastic. I remember once when they taught me how to catch the taco. Taco is the octopus, right?
Okay.
And so we're out in the bay, and they said, watch us, watch me. Zinzo Uchima, one of my best friends there, he said, watch me get this octopus, because you could see them. The bay was so short, you could see them going into the coral there. So he'd go down maybe 6-7 feet, to get to the bottom of it, and he'd come right up with one, just a few seconds, Wow, I said, okay, but they would throw it away back into the water, because they were pulling the trick on me. They said, okay, Kimo, now it's your turn. You go get one octopus, one taco. So I dove in, I saw them right away, and you chase them, and they go to the coral surface, right? And they sort of slither into it, and suck themselves into it, right? And you could get a tentacle sometime, and you could break it off. But they never broke one off. They'd bring the whole octopus to the surface, and I couldn't understand how they were doing it. So sometimes they had a little stick that they gave me. So I thought that just to try to pull them out of there, So anyway, I tried 3 or 4 times, and I could never get one. They were laughing. So finally they said, okay, you watch us. So Zinzo went down, and I was at the surface just using the snorkel, just watching what he would do. So he just went down to where the octopus was, and the octopus was into the coral, and he used that stick close to him, and he just touched him, like tickling him. And one leg would come out, and the next leg come out, and finally the octopus was playing with the stick, it was tickling him. So he'd come out, and then I guess they had like a little hook on the end of it, and he would hook it just right and pull it out, and then he would be able to get the rest of the octopus and carry the whole thing up to the top. It only took about maybe 2 minutes, couldn't hold your breath too long, but he had enough time to get that.
Wow.
But it was so interesting to see how little things that they do in Okinawa that you don't understand, until you see how it's done. Wow, it's a lot of fun to go octopus hunting now.
Right. So you had to work while you were in Okinawa, but you also had
during that time I was in the Marine Corps, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of my jobs were I worked a lot at night, and so I had a lot of time during the day, and that's when I would go down to when I first started studying Kobudo with Master Matayoshi. I went there just for the karate intentionally, but then after I'd been there for a while, I would be there on a Saturday or any time during the day. He never worked. He never had to have a job, and Hiku Sensei was already retired. So Hiku Sensei would spend a lot of time in his home, but he also had grandchildren that he played with. But anyway, Master Matayoshi would be training himself, and he was only like 42 years old or so when I first met him.
He'd be training by himself, or did
by
he have
himself?
other people?
Yeah, but many people would come by during that time. But he would always be in the dojo. His favorite place was in the dojo. He always had that stuff on the side of the wall, and people would come by just about any time during the day, and he would train with them. But especially Saturday and Sunday. But even during the week, with some people in those days in Okinawa were just sort of becoming professional martial artists. So some of them, they didn't have another job. They were relying on the martial arts.
Wow.
Not so many, but there were just a few. And like Odo Sensei. Odo Sensei, just slips my mind right now what kind of job he had. I forget what it was. But anyway, he would come down sometimes during the day, but especially at night. But then on Saturday and Sunday, sometimes he would be there Saturday and Sunday all day long with me. And Kimo Sensei would be training the karate during the day, and Hiku Sensei would be there to help him. Yeah. And Kimo Sensei was a cab driver, so he spent a lot of time in the taxi. My goodness. Wow. I would say he was spent maybe 14, 16 hours a day driving taxi until he was able to get a couple himself. He bought extra ones, and he started his own little company like that.
Let me get you a glass of water.
Oh, okay.
I know you're talking a lot. So, Mr. Odo was a good friend of Master Matayoshi's.
In that time, yes, and also before the war, Odo Sensei had studied with Master Matayoshi's father. And then when Master Matayoshi came back to Okinawa, of course, that's where he wanted to go, to Matayoshi Sensei's dojo.
What about Kanai Sensei? Was he around at that time?
Kanai Sensei?
Kanai Sensei?
Oh, yes, but he didn't have anything to do with Master Matayoshi in those times, not until the end of the 60s or first of the 1970s. Kanai Sensei.
Did he train with the father as well, or
no,
just with the son?
He studied with the Master Matayoshi, and he started in. He might have done some in the late 60s, but I know he started very strongly. He studied some other Kobudo, not just Master Matayoshi,
okay.
but he began studying under Master Matayoshi. He even became the president of Master Matayoshi's Kodokan. And in fact, the last time that I saw him actually in the dojo training was like maybe 1978 when I went there one time.
What are some of the differences between the way that you know that Kobudo was taught and trained in the early days versus some of the changes that were made over the years? To your knowledge.
No, there are very distinct differences, because I remember when Master Matayoshi started to teach me, I think he was trying to teach me the old way, what we'd call the old way, because like with the timbe, he had one in his house that he would bring down once in a while. It was made of leather. He said it was from Taiwan. And he always said you have to hide behind it. And it was part of his kata. When he did the kata, it's the same as it is today, except some movements are different. And he would say you have to hide. You hold the roshin by your arm here, and you sort of almost like a cat stance or squatting position behind the roshin, so you can't be seen so well. And then when he started, he would sort of like stand up, cut one strike across the front of it, and then he would begin the kata. So some things have changed. I didn't understand the Japanese language so well. Not so bad. I mean, I was speaking better in those days than I do today. But he explained some things to me like we don't do this in the kata necessarily, but it's the practical part of use in the kata if you really use it for bunkai. So you want to hide behind the timbe, which is very important. But today you see people they kind of open themselves up, and they're seems like their kata movement is not the way he wanted me to do it, because he was stressing the hiding behind the weapon more. Today it seems to be more open.
So it seems many of the techniques were what most people might call sneaky or kind of
but bunkai, just what really worked as a bunkai, because if you're hiding behind it, they don't. If you have the roshin behind it, they don't know where it's coming from. But here, if it's up in the air or up to the side, you really see where it is, right? So, like you do some of the techniques coming forward, it would always be behind it. So because the old timbe were usually made of palm leaf, right? And you could cut right through it, just like
because it was a hat.
Yeah, like a hat,
okay, right.
A farm hat, right? So it would just slice right through it. But now they're made of hard material, so you can't go. So it's better to use it on the side. So things adjusted because of history, I guess, modern history. But the old way has to be kind of neglected, to do the new way and the old way are quite different.
Now, originally they weren't doing like in karate we tend to do basics and then kata and then forms of kumite and such.
Okay, that was one thing with Kanai Sensei. When he became maybe president of the association sometime around the early 70s, he developed the Hojo Undo, the basics for the bows. And if you see him in the dojo today, you see him walk up and down the dojo, just like doing basics in karate. Yeah. But in the old days, we started with Chonokon. Okay, Sensei were for a few weeks would just do techniques of that kata, and they were different than the next kata.
Right.
So we learned those techniques, and we'd go down the dojo floor, doing like basics.
Right.
And he would make sure, like after the first part, you can have 5 movements there, or it's 3 movements. I mean, you say one is like a wind up and a strike, a wind up and a strike, and then come to kamae. So like 5 movements, but really it's supposed to be down block, head strike, and kamae. So he made sure that you were doing it the right way. And then when you go your first movement over to the left 45 degrees, it was where you brought the bow in a big arc around, close to the ground. So you go between the person's leg, and the next movement is to pick the person up, and starting to the move to the side is to trip them. So today they don't seem to do those real strict movements that he used to really teach us. If you make a standard, like Kanai Sensei did, a standard way of training, then that's what you're going to put in your katas. Now, if it's called like a Jodan Nanauchi, or a Jodan Ame, or whatever, if that's the way you've learned in the kata, and the sensei says Jodan Nanauchi, everyone's going to look the same. But we don't mean, you hardly ever heard the word Jodan Nanauchi until modern time, because they made a move that said Jodan Nanauchi. So everybody that in the kata that has a move that they would call Jodan Nanauchi, every kata looked that same. That part of the kata would be the same. It's a little complicated if you put two katas side by side, say Chōno-kon and Sakogawa, Sushino-kon, Chichikumbo, Chikinbo. Okay, if you put all those side by side, they came from different masters, so the master had a different idea, so they should not look the same, and because because of their history was so different. But today, a lot of the kata looks. You break the kata down like a Go-Juryu. A lot of people, each kata in Go-Juryu is supposed to be different. But a lot of people, I mean, if you have a basic stance and a mawashi uke from one kata to the other, so different. Like Suparimpe, you have, when you make your circles, you make a big circle, a narrow circle, and make all this like a Seiinchin movement here, right? So, and now, in modern time, there's one big movement, and then a movement that looks like Seiinchin. So a lot is kind of lost in those aspects there. Now, I say this because I remember when, in the dojo in the old days, I would hear mawashi uke, mawashi oki, mawashi chisai, and seiinchin desu. You know, so there's a big circle, little circle, and seiinchin. But today they don't say that, mawashi uke, da. They don't really put a name to it. So if they don't have a name to it, they look like the same. They'll end up being the same. But if somebody tells you, okay, this is a big circle, going this way, when you go the other way, you go a little circle, and then you do the seiinchin part. So things change. I think that it might be, you might almost say it's a downfall of the karate in Okinawa in the modern times, because the younger teachers who learn from the masters, but maybe the second generation now, my time was one of the last generations where they really was explicit in teaching the kata. After that, the next generation start to fall apart a little bit, I think. And now I think in Okinawa there's a lot of, the kata seems to be, by face value, by looking at it, it's the same. But if you look at it clearly and remember how you were taught, like for instance, like Suparimpe, you can see the movements that are different. But the way they done it today, even the body rhythm, some people do it. They make more dramatic, or shows type kata. So it'll go slower here, faster there, but it isn't the way that it was in the old days.
When you learn the Kobudo, how many? Well, you've told me before that you learned 5 bow kata, but there were many others.
Well, there was more in Master Matayoshi dojo, and there's one more that I wish I could have remembered. It was called Kubonokon, and I just cannot remember it. But the 5 major katas now in the dojo I've studied, and then he wanted to teach me like 2 tonfa, 2 bo, 2 sai. Every kata I think just about every kata had at least, each weapon had at least 2 katas to it. But I said, Sensei, my head is not so good. Please just teach me 1 kata from all the weapons now. So he did that way.
So even back then, the forms maybe weren't as, I think they ended up standardizing on a different set of forms.
Yes. Well, the basics of the bow. The main thing is the bow katas. The bow is the most common, popular thing, I guess, in the dojo. So they made a standard movements for opening up the. For example, when you go to the Kobudo dojo, you warm up regular without a weapon, and just do the regular warm-ups like karate. Then you put the bow in your hand and you start doing just the hojo undo, basic training with a bow, and everybody does the same thing. So when you do chōno-kon, you do what's shown in that basic training for the kata, even though it wasn't exactly the way Master Matayoshi would have taught it in the kata originally.
Right. So even for instance, the Sancho Sai, that you learned
Yes.
many years ago
Yes.
is different than the way they standardize
Exactly.
today.
I don't do the kata that they do today. It's if you look at it, the pattern is very similar. It's
Yes.
very quite similar.
Yes, yes.
But since they showed us a way of holding the sai in your hand and the sai lock on against the bow or something, which was I don't see people do the way I was taught anymore.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with what they're doing today. It's just I might say just another way of doing things, which it came from the same master, and he's approved it, so it's okay.
Right. Yes.
But in the old days, a lot of times I was the only person in the dojo during the day. Now on the weekends we get maybe 25 or 30 people come from different styles of karate to study with Master Matayoshi, and I think that's another reason why standardizing things helped. But then it helped to teach a lot of people, but it didn't help to preserve the kata in its original form.
Right. What else? Anything more about Master Matayoshi that you can think of?
Oh my goodness, there's so many kind of things that I can think of. I mean, I can just remember him sometimes on Saturday or Sunday, he just put a show on for us for a couple of hours. He would just show his drunken system, his Kingaryu, just so many things. He was a great entertainer. I mean, in his own right, he could do just about everything. Now, his father was a Shorin-ryu master, so he learned all the Shorin-ryu from his father. And then when he grew up in the early days in that area, so he knew the Higa dojo and Miyagi Chojun Sensei, so he studied Goju-ryu at that time also. But when he started living in Higa Sensei's dojo for 10 years, he studied right there, and he was one of the senior persons in the dojo. So I talked to many people in Okinawa that became good friends of mine. They said, "Oh, Master Matayoshi is a master of Shorin-ryu, master of Goju-ryu, and of course he's the top Kobudo master, this kind of stuff." But he sometimes he would really have a real good time demonstrating for us all the stuff that he had learned.
What can you tell us more about Master both Higa Senior and Junior, and in the training at the Shodokan? I know that Master Higa Senior was quite old when you were.
He was very old, but he was like what 68 when he passed away. I think 66. I think 66. Yeah, 68. But he wasn't so old. But for his ability, I mean, he was very, very good in his technique. And his son, Seikichi Higa, he was like a junior student in the dojo. I don't mean low. I mean he wasn't one of the top bananas in the dojo. Like Takamine Sensei, who I'm not sure if he's still alive right now. This is 2007, and but the last time I saw him, he was in the hospital with a real terrible arthritis, and his wife was in the same hospital. So I hate to speculate, but I think maybe if they might have gone, he and his wife, but. He was the senior person in the dojo, and so he took over when Master Higa died, and a few other people in the dojo. Well, every time a master dies, the ones who wanted to open up their own dojos or wanted to go someplace else, that was the perfect opportunity to just go. So when Higa Seiko Sensei passed away, a lot of people left the dojo, and then again in 97, 98. When his son Seikichi Sensei passed away, then people left again. So it's just like what marks the generation, I guess. It just starts to split up there. And a lot of people, it wasn't such a bad reason, I guess, for some people to break away. It's just that they wanted to be on their own. But as long as the master was still alive, then they gave them that respect to just be right there with him.
Are you okay still talking for a while longer? You're not getting too tired?
No problem.
Okay, good. What about the training in Goju-ryu? What was it like how was it the same or different than the training that you had gotten in Hawaii in terms of just the way you trained?
Well, Okinawan karate has been rather a casual type of dojo. They're never really strict like a samurai. In Master Toguchi's dojo, if you go to the Shorei-kan up in Koza, it was very straight line and very militaristic, but not over militaristic. But you could tell the discipline there was different than it would be in some dojos. And of course, Master Toguchi, he started to teach a lot of GIs, of course. So he kind of designed it after that, because he might have sometimes 200 people training under him. And so to manage that many people, you got to have it strict, But in the Higa dojo, that might be 15, 20, 25 people maximum.
Right.
And in the old days, the things that have changed is that many dojos had a 2-hour class from 7 to 9. And at 9 o'clock, everyone from white belt to shodan was training. At 9 o'clock, they left. Okay? Coming at that time was the old students. Say in a dojo like Higa Sensei dojo, Higa Sensei would, sometimes he would always be there during that 7 to 9 class, but he would go in and out. But at 9 o'clock, he was always there to teach. And that happened, that stayed that way.
Senior sensei or
Pardon me? The senior, Seiko Sensei. And his son would be there, and all the senior people would be at 9 o'clock, because that class was to work on the senior subjects. So from 7 to 9, you don't have much time to work on anything except shodan, nidan.
You were already shodan by the time you landed in Okinawa?
I was, but I was given shodan just before I left Hawaii. And but my teacher told me that when you get to Okinawa, you wear your white belt, put a white, because you're only 19 years old until they accept you. So I did that, and that didn't take long. But then, so then I would wear the black belt. But then in the dojo, though, from 7 to 9 was junior students, shodan, nidan, and below. But 9 o'clock, the old people start coming. So when I first saw them coming like that, when I was being the first class, and I asked one day to Higa Sensei, boy, you have a lot of friends that come here, taksan tomodachi kune, come here to train, what is you? And he said, oh, that's the 9 o'clock, kuji desu, hajime, and it starts at 9 o'clock. So, wow, that's pretty interesting. He said, sometime you can do it sometime. Oh, really? Pretty good. So when you told me one time you can start coming to the 9 o'clock class, I thought that mean I didn't go to the first class. I would just come for the 9. So no, you got to go to both classes. You'll teach the first class with the other students, and then you'll join the second class as a black belt student. So, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting. So in those days, it's easy. For 4 hours, you would train there pretty easy. Sometimes late on Friday night, we work late into the night, and sometimes they would do the same thing on Saturday. But they were always there. That was the good thing about Okinawan dojos. Most dojos, the teacher lives on the premises right there, so anytime you wanted to get instruction, you go right there.
Did you, since you had already spent a 2-hour class, did you guys spend much time warming up or doing implements?
Oh no, when you came down, when people came when I first started seeing that they were coming early, they were coming like maybe 15, maybe half an hour early, and they were out there doing all kind of their kind of implement training. And when their class starts at 9 o'clock, they were ready to go. They would still warm up around Sensei, make a circle around him, and he would just lead the exercises, or have his son or Takamine Sensei or whoever, Kimo Sensei, would just get out there and start leading the class. And maybe 15, 20 minutes of warm-ups that way, just to get your body loosened up again to start that class. And then you do a kata, and they would explain some bunkai to it.
The Shodokan's the only place I've ever seen where people get in a circle to do the basics.
That's very popular there, because that's the old way. Like if you go to Toku Sensei's or most dojos, they had a lot of association with the military, U.S. military in those days. So the dojo was sort of got accustomed to having more people, so it's better to control them like in a platoon formation rather than a big circle. Because I remember maybe 15 people in a big circle, or 2 circles maybe around Sensei was easy to do. And then when you start doing kata, you face the kamidana, the shrine, and just start doing kata that way. And in those days, they really stressed the 8 directions and the sort of the kata. Today, you don't hear too much about it.
Can you explain more about the 8 directions and why that's important?
It's just like the hoppo, 8 points, right? Front, back, left, and right side, and then the angles from the front and the back. So that makes 8 sides. So your kata is always in the dojo facing the front, right? So you go to those angles. It's not like, for example, in part of Seiuchi where you go to your right side there, right, 45 degree. You couldn't go halfway. You had to be able, they watch your eyes look, see. If you're looking here and you're coming over here to a motion that's not so real for the kata, then they would stand there and say, okay, right. Make sure you're really blocking it here. So your eye and movement had to be really well coordinated.
Was this where they also stressed the not necessarily having both heels on exactly the same line?
In the second class. In the first class, up to a shodan level, exactly sideways was okay, like a side position. heel and heel is okay. But as time went by, where this is here, my heel would be here. Yeah. So that gave that center line was covered. This way is just you're open from the front or back, but the side's okay. But this way here, you're completely covered because you move your stance so well, so quickly. You're completely covered. But here, you got to move your body to get into the correct position. So they didn't stress that. They expressed how to move your feet, but not in such a how you say, like a covered position, like for covering the center line. The proper way of covering the center line is to have your heel and toe in line, one way or the other, whether it's cat stance or whatever it is. So they didn't stress that so much, getting too short. A lot of people picked it up, though. I mean, it's not so easy, so difficult to do. You just gotta. And sometimes somebody will say, hey, you know, when you get out of this class, if you go to other class, you're gonna have to have your feet this way. So somebody try to pick up once in a while. They're right doing it.